and others, and that they'll be willing to withdraw their amendments in this group.
My Lords, I'd first of all like to thank people for such a wide-ranging and interesting set of contributions. I actually take comfort from the fact that so many people understood, I think, what the amendments were trying to do, even if they didn't fully successfully succeed in that. And I thought it was quite interesting that the noble Lord Alan of Hallam, in the first debate said that he maybe was a bit isolated on the apps. I mean, I actually agreed with him. That might not do your reputation any good, but I agreed with you on that. However, I did feel when you said that, I thought, welcome to my world. So I'm actually quite pleased that, you know, this hasn't all been shot down in flames before we started. It really was, though, a serious attempt to tackle something that I think is a real problem. The Minister, you know, if only I took this, you know, the Minister says the bill is designed to avoid disproportionate burden on services. I mean, all I can say is sack the designer. I mean, it is absolutely going to have a disproportionate burden on a wide range of small services that will not be able to cope, which is why so many of them are worried about it. And I do think that when I thought it was interesting, I think that 80% of companies who will be caught up in this kind of red tape are small and micro businesses. I'll come on to the small point in a moment. But Baroness Harding warns us that small tech businesses become big tech businesses. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that's supposedly, for me, that's a success story. You know, that's what I want. Isn't that what we want? I mean, I think economic development grades a positive thing. I don't want them to fail. But I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think small businesses will ever grow into big tech businesses if they face a disproportionate burden in the regulatory sense that I've tried to describe. And that's what I'm worried about. And I think that's not a positive thing to be celebrated. I also want to stress that it's not just in terms of small tech, big tech. There are these community sites based on collective moderation. Wikipedia has indeed had a lot of discussion here, but I do think for a bill that stresses that it wants to empower users, that we should think what it means when you have these community sites that are actually user moderated, that are telling us that they won't be able to carry on, they won't be able to get through. That's what they're saying. I thought it was interesting that Lord Clement Jones says that he relies on Wikipedia. Many of us do, although please don't believe what it says about me. But you know, like all of these things. But then there was a kind of like, well, yeah, but Reddit's a bit dodgy. But actually, the bill isn't meant to be deciding, if you see what I mean, which ones it trusts in quite that way, right? It's to people's taste. Because I was really struck by the fact that the noble Baroness Kidron said small is not safe, and used the example of the incel example. And I think that what my concern is that I'm not emphasising that small is safe. I'm saying that the small entities won't survive this process. That's my fear. I don't mean the big ones are nasty and dangerous, the small ones are cosy and lovely and Wikipedia-like. I'm suggesting that smaller entities will not be able to survive the regulatory onslaught, and that's the main reason why I raise this. I think that when Baroness Merron says, you know, that these entities can cause great harm and so on, I just am worried about a culture of fear in which we demonise hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of innocent businesses, or tech businesses and communities, and end up destroying them when we don't intend to do that. And I tried to put in the amendment an ability for Ofcom, if there are problematic sites that are risky, then that there should be a way of Ofcom dealing with them. But as the Minister pointed out, and the Minister kept saying, low-risk search engines have been exempted. I'm suggesting that low-risk small microbes are exempted, which is the majority of them. That's what I'm suggesting, rather than we assume that they're all guilty and then you have to kind of get exempted. So that was where I was going. I thought it was interesting when the Noble Lord McRae asked us to, asked us how many pornography sites are in scope, which pornographic websites have, 1 million or less views. I mean, it's almost like I'm glad that I don't know the answer to that, otherwise people might wonder why I did. But the point about it is that there are always going to be sites that are threatening or at risk to children, as we're discussing. But all of the time we have to bear in mind, and I think this was the important point that the Noble Lord Moylan made, was in our absolute determination to protect children via this bill, that we don't end up having unintendedly damaging society as a whole. Adult access to free speech, for example, is one of my concerns, but also businesses and so on, and that we don't have that as an outcome. Right. I'm absolutely sure that my amendments could be majorly improved. I think that Lord Moylan's approach might be better. I'm happy to look at the metric of whether it's 1 million monthly users or not. But I'm insistent, I think, that the bipartisan approach to risk from the Minister and the opposition is something that I don't think will help us achieve what we want from this bill and will cause unnecessary problems. I think that we have to avoid a recipe for risk aversion that will hold back what are progressive, wonderful aspects of the online world, or at least educational and in some instance business side to it. So I'm obviously not going to push the amendments now, but I really will come back to it, or if it's not me, I hope somebody does, because I think the fact that some people said half of Lord Moylan's points were correct was a step forward. I've got no interest in you supporting my amendments as long as we take seriously the content of my concerns, or the concerns expressed by Lord Vasey, myself and Lord Moylan particularly. I beg, what did I say? I beg to withdraw my amendments.
Sorry.
Is it your Lordship's pleasure that the amendment be withdrawn? The amendment is by leave withdrawn.